new set of lungs.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello, Lori.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good.
It's a pretty rainy day here.
Yeah.
Is it rainy where you are?
It's rainy.
So rainy.
But it's warm. It feels amazing. I feel amazing.
Wow. You're in a good space, it sounds like.
It does. You know, I have talked to you about this online course I've been taking. And this month was focusing on justice. And I gotta say, without going too much into it, that it's really made a difference in how I feel energetically. So when you're trying to at the end of the month, I should have a better idea of how to kind of influence things like more of like on an astral plane. That's the only word that I can think of is, you know, energetically. And in order to do that, you have to kind of take an internal look and see what things are affecting you still. What kind of energy.
So are you saying that every month you have a word? So is this the January word is justice, or what are you saying?
So it's a 2-year program and I have like 2 months left, and every month is like a theme. And then every week there's a different assignment in accordance with that theme. So it's like a self-help group. So yeah, this month the theme was justice. And then each week you kind of focus on something different, and you kind of start out by kind of looking at your internal self and doing kind of, you know, self-therapy on like what is exactly
I love that idea.
Still
So
influencing me. Yeah. So I just kind of feel like I kind of went through the fire again, and I just feel really good.
What would you describe as going through the fire being like?
Well, for me, everyone is probably different, but in my life,
You say it.
I have some pretty intense, strong minds that really...
In your relationships?
Yeah. I definitely have some strong minds that have a huge impact on my close relationships. And I'm kind of like the only person that sees it or feels it. Mm-hmm. So when that's happening, I thought I had, you know, it's weird because every month I feel like I got my footing, and then they give you the next assignment. You're like, wow, I thought I was doing good before. Now I'm like really doing well. So yeah, they just give you a tool, and your tool is to work with like this council of fire. And it's just checking in with them and then doing what you need to do. And one thing that I've really found is that I don't have that fear of rejection anymore. I don't have like that worry that I'm going to lose and that I should do anything to keep it. I feel like I have a healthy understanding of everyone has, like I've said this before, everyone has their own path. And I've always thought that, but now I feel like, you know, you just kind of go one step deeper. And now I feel that on a very...
I just thought of 3 things at the same time, like the last paragraph you said. First thing I wanted to say is like it's rare and special that you feel growth. I think that a lot of people can level up in their lives and not really know that it's a level up. Do you know what I mean? That's a really cool thing. That's a really cool thing. I remember John Mayer came to Berkeley when I was in college, and he said one of the most important things, one of his biggest pieces of advice is to set goals that you can see and attain so that you can, like that reminds me of what you just said, because I think a lot of people, and I've been there, always get if you don't have a consistent validation, who would it be anyway?
Exactly.
Then you don't, and then you feel like you're your own worst critic. So why would you be like, you assume that if you're hard on yourself, you don't assume that you're doing better. You're like, well, maybe, yeah. So that's amazing that you feel like that. It sounds like, do you credit that to the course itself, or how did you see it that way?
Well, I've been doing this since I was 23, so I wouldn't say...
Not this course itself, right?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think it's just me and how I am, but then it's the topics they have you cover that kind of puts your, I guess like Adyashanti would say, points you in the right direction. Because I think... along this whole journey of my life, there's just been points where I'm like, I feel like I've got it together. Mm-hmm. And then usually it was, a trigger. It was like, wow, apparently I haven't fixed that. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, wow, you know what? Guess what? You don't really have to fix yourself.
Maybe that's a really cool way to do it, is to maybe that monthly thing gives you building blocks so you can actually see that you're building upon something else. Because I think that a lot of people they're trying to fix everything all at once. I guess I can only speak personally. I've been in the place where I'm trying to spread myself too thin, and that way that you're talking about, that you have like a theme and then ways that you build weekly, sounds pretty
when I was
helpful.
When I was 23, when I was very young and I was getting a divorce, I can remember that feeling of being overwhelmed. So there's this compounding feeling of like, I already know that I'm trying to get my life together, basically because you're in a divorce, but then you compound it with the negative impact of other people. And there's this thing about me that had this repeating thought that I've cured it now, I think, but I've always thought there was something wrong with me. And so I've kind of got to that core, and I don't think that anymore.
So cool.
Yeah. And honestly, I would have to say, for anyone who has that, like, you can get to the core. Like, it is possible, because I would at my worst times be in a corner rocking, pulling my hair out. And that wasn't just depression. That was, wow, my mental state is really messed up. But see, back then we didn't have the information that we do now on psychological abuse that goes on. And so I really am thankful that we have that information so other people can get help. Yeah.
Can I make a metaphor that might be... I have to make this metaphor.
Okay.
So yesterday there was a woman who came to our house, and she was a cleaner. I wasn't super into it at first, but I'm not going to say no to many things. I kind of had this feeling the other day. I felt maybe... I'm a pretty optimistic person, but in that moment and in that day, I was really just like, I miss my friends. I miss dance. I miss, like, when is it going to... What? Something's got to give. Like, like what? What's next? And every day it just seemed like it was a house thing. Like how can I... If I could only get the house to this place where it was new again,
right,
that I'd be able to start again. And I started to learn about myself through days and days of trying to do this, that I'm more of an organizer than a cleaner, and that for some reason there's these things, and I just felt like it was so far gone that I couldn't get there. And anyway, this woman left, and it was amazing, the feeling of, like, she did the windowsills and the doorknobs, like touching the doorknob to each room. And it was such a relief. Like, I felt like, oh my gosh, I understand that I can be more careful and not just like walk around with jam hands. My siblings call me jam hands.
Right.
It's pretty gnarly, but like glue on your hands, like you can be more, but I couldn't figure out how to clean up the messes that I'd made in a different state of mind. And I really felt mature this time around. That it was awesome that I could find that clarity and that I could move on from that. You can't do that in your mind. You can't do that with your relationships. You can't do that only with physical things. I think you can really do that, is have somebody else clean up for you.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. It's different.
You have to be
so
in your body experiencing it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I get that so much better now. You can't intellectualize it. It has to be.
It just made me see so much better what I can do, what I haven't done. I'm not saying everybody should get a cleaner, but it really worked for me.
Yeah.
To see things differently. But you can't. There's no real shortcuts though to mental digging and cleaning.
Right.
So it's definitely not it's not a parallel in any way.
Right. There's something about the paying attention, being in your body and paying attention. So I had a roommate once, or back in college, and her name was Lori too. And she was a perfectionist. And I thought, like, I think she has OCD. And I thought, if I could just take a little bit of this away. And so I at least experienced that young enough. I mean, I was not dirty by any means. I'm kind of a picker-upper. But seeing her go over the top, I thought, wow, if I can just get close to that, then I will be doing so much better. So, again, it's not like my house is perfectly clean, but I'm just making the analogy in the same way that you are, that watching and focusing and being in your body, because you can see other people do that, but you could be like not even paying attention.
What's amazing too is that I just thought this, that we can help give each other relief and help teach each other, by hiring somebody to do something. And we can, if our mind's in the right space, that we want to better have, better mindfulness, then somebody can help.
Yeah. So that had to have been something we talked about prime before. So you must have been primed for that in a way that, because you've had cleaners before,
right? But they're different kind of. I mean, oh my gosh, like,
yeah,
definitely not the theme of our whatever, but like of our podcast. But Tim is into that. But I don't know. I think women inherit some sort of shame, but I don't actually really, like, I think I'd be on a really low end of shame for that. Like, I'm like, yeah, I do something that I don't do. Like, that's great. But asking for help is not my first instinct. And I think a lot of us feel that way, or don't know where to ask for help. We're not all taught that. I mean, imagine if public schools got us to learn about ourselves and what we can do, what we can work on, and what are just not our, somewhere we can ask for help. Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Well, I told you about my friend who has ADHD, and she explained, she just got a cleaner too, which is funny. And but she goes on and off. She gets a cleaner and then quits, and then cleaner and quits. Anyways, but what I think by people that think that way, because basically if you organize things, you have more clarity. So if you clean and you organize, right, you have a straighter sense of mind and clarity. And so, but the thing is like with Kim, she never gets to that point because of she has difficulty thinking in a way that will get her to the point that she's fully organized. So she says that she's constantly overwhelmed with, now I have to do this and this and this and this and this. She never, when she was on medicine, she goes, well, I could just go into the kitchen, and if I wanted to cook cookies, I could just go in there and I can cook cookies. But when she's not on the medicine, she's like, I go up there, and then task after task after task after task. Next thing you know, she's out of the house running an errand. And then in 3 hours, she's exhausted and there's no cookies.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like with you getting help, it's like you can get yourself to that state of clarity.
Yeah.
Better.
And it's amazing that what the state of clarity does.
So what
because
does it do?
Because I do feel like I have the ability and the mind to understand how to keep clarity.
Oh, good.
Like I'm not confused once it gets there. And I do have to follow my maturity. It's very enlightening every time my growing up process has been just, to me, just like amazing to watch. I feel like it's just been so cool for me to watch that there's so much. I see things different every time I grow up. Like, it's just great. I just can't even wait till I'm 100. It'll just be, that's a weird way to say it, but I really just, I learn every time anything changes. It's never the same.
Well, just to follow your lead, Mike and I had that conversation about a month ago. We kind of went down this same path of this talking about, what do you think it was? Was it this? Was it that? To be in the space that we are now.
Oh my gosh, Tim and I just had this conversation last night.
You did?
Yeah.
So we had this chat kind of recent. It was within the last month. And he just said, you know what, Lori? He goes, we went through so many things. He goes, we tried to go to our parents. We tried to go to our in-laws. I went to my sister-in-law. I went to my brother-in-law, and no one could save us. Like, there was no saving us. It was just, it was a monumental shift in our life. Hold on, here you go. And then Mike and I look back, and now we've talked to other people since then, right? We've made it through, and he's had a coworker. We've had a friend, a lifelong friend. Well, not lifelong, but through a teacher for Carly, she became a really close friend, and we've kept in touch with her. And then she bared her soul on us, and then she was like, you went through it too. So it was this weird sensation of Mike and I were just kind of had this piece Awareness. It's like, Lori, Mike, we're going through a grow up phase,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't do that until those things happen in life.
The thing that I kind of sparked it was an interview with somebody from The Bachelor talking about timing. And so they were saying how timing is so important in relationships. Anyway, I didn't watch the whole interview, but it just got there's the ADHD too. All I have to do is read, a title to something, chase it. It's just, it's exciting. But I was just like, wow, timing. Like, I was like, how much does timing play into a relationship? And I asked him, I said, what do you think about that? And that's when we got into that conversation last night. And he said timing had a huge impact, but it's over such a huge amount of time. I mean, it's just, and then we started talking about all the little things that have happened that change things. If this didn't happen, or if this happened instead. Or he was talking about him personally. And then he's like, well, same with you. If this didn't happen, all these things.
Yeah, you begin to appreciate your
journey. And then it just goes, shoo. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the healthy that just what you're describing is part of maturity. Like, it's not an 8-year-old person having a tantrum anymore. I'm not getting my way. It's more of that emotional intelligence of being able to have tools to work through those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Realizing what makes you tick, too, what makes someone else tick, who you want to work with, where you want to put your energy. I mean, all those things. It's just amazing what choice does for your world.
See, now that's funny you say that, because my decision to want to do with you a radio station, and how I think about it just even today as compared to when I first came up with the idea, or compared to a year ago, where I would be thinking about that idea and I would instantly go to that, like you talked about validation earlier, I would instantly go to externalizing, well, no one's given me permission. No one's told me I'd be good at that. Even though Mike sits there and says, he was like, how many times have I got to tell you? He's like, I think you'd be great at that. And I'm all, yeah. But I would be sitting with this weird internal fear. Again, I think it's just self-esteem. This weird internal fear of, well, no one's, and then I say it to someone, which is always the wrong person. You say it to someone and the other person just projects, because they're like, I would never do a radio station. So they're like, no. And so, but this time, like even today, I was doing research on it. It's weird. I think of it completely inside myself. There's no other chords or no other energies that are influencing that decision. It really is just if I want to. And I know that. I mean,
That's
you can relate, right?
Cool. Absolutely. And it's kind of like when you're in it's like, who do you really want to validate you? And what if they did? Would it really be that different? Because when you look at it, no, it wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Because
It
it's
really
all
wouldn't.
me anyways.
Yeah. What if Oprah was like, Lori, you're amazing? Would it really change anything? No.
No, because it's
No.
because it's my
We
own
wouldn't be able-
self-esteem.
Isn't that amazing? Like, take
Yeah.
it to the limit. Like, Oprah's like, wow, Lori. Like, no, it's not going to change anything. It's all you.
Yeah. Yeah, because it comes down to whether it still comes down to my own created self and my own self-esteem. What do I think I'm capable of? It's just fascinating. I really find it fascinating to be able to go from a state of mind where myself was pretty damn near extinct, where you're coming from a clean slate, because you don't just get your rug pulled out from under you, you get titles taken from you, and then titles not acknowledged,
Or things that are still you, parts that are really deeply you, are tied to parts that are maybe not you, and people tie those together, and the whole rug is gone.
well,
And
they can't take my titles away. That's the whole
No, of
thing.
course.
That's the whole
Of course.
illusion. That's the joke about the whole abuse, psychological abuse, mental abuse thing, is that you really get convinced that someone can take that away from you.
It reminds me of, okay, so I'm just seeing Aladdin, and how Aladdin comes in, and he's got the magic carpet. And Jasmine wants to be free. She has her own mind. And he takes her on a magic carpet ride. So she thinks she needs the magic carpet, right? And at the end, she realizes that he's not this prince. And that's pretty confusing, right? Because you tie these things together.
Extremely.
So he shows her this whole new world. Like, when did you last let your heart decide? A whole new world, right?
Right.
It is confusing when the path looked a certain way, and that's understandable. But
And
The lesson
I'm just
learned.
talking about the present. Like, let's just take Jasmine flying up in the clouds on the carpet, and then she gets the rug pulled out from underneath her.
Mm-hmm.
You have no grounding because you don't have
Because
the
you're on a
things-
magic carpet. Yeah.
You don't have the things that, well, it's not even your carpet. You're
No.
standing on someone else's reality, and that person, and you don't exist unless that other person says that it exists. It's
Yeah.
so weird how they can convince you that you don't exist.
I mean, I think that I would see it as her family as being the ones who teach her or that she feels like she doesn't exist. Like, I think Aladdin's saying, kind of hinting that she could fly. I don't think he's trying to drop her in like the atmosphere without gravity.
Well,
I think that
it depends on. I guess I'm talking about the evil Aladdin. Aladdin in
Oh.
the cartoon would never do that.
Okay.
But I
guess
do.
I was thinking of, okay, so if Jasmine's smart, and she is, because she already showed that she has her own mind. She just grew up in a wealthy family. It's not really her fault. You know?
Yeah, I think
Her dad's like, you have to marry somebody.
I'm stretching out of the analogy a little bit,
Yeah.
I guess.
I can do that.
Because I guess Jasmine didn't have a mental breakdown.
Maybe we didn't see it.
I don't
Maybe
think
it's
she got divorced. Or I don't think she got depressed.
Maybe not. Maybe they just didn't show it
Yeah.
off camera. She was just screaming and crying and just like ruining everything.
You know, you talk. I love your
Jasmine
analogies.
Jasmine behind the scenes. She's just like crashing like
They just skip right over that.
ornaments and like. Ugh. Sorry, this looks funny to me.
I know.
Yeah, Jasmine's just mad. Mad Jasmine.
Mad Jasmine.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about like the mad. Cause sometimes I flip flop between, how just to try to describe how things feel. I don't think a lot of times psychology. I think their terms don't create a feeling sensation, and so we revert back to magical thinking or spiritual thinking. And to me, that really helps a person relate to how it feels, because you can take
Do
a
you think that
category. Well, like you can take a category of abuse, and it's like, what really is abuse? And I was listening to the comedian, now if I can remember her name, and she was telling Oprah that she had been in an abusive relationship, and she's like, I just thought I knew what an abuse looked like and felt like, you know, but she went through it, and she was like, nope, anyone can go through it. And so the words don't necessarily make sense all the time in psychology. You can be looking at the words, but if they don't create that sensation. So like one of the things I was thinking of, and I think I started talking to you about it, was the magical, the sensation, or what it feels like that someone else has these magic powers, that with that strong mind, that it feels like they have magical powers. You know, you walk out and you don't have a self, and and you're weak. So one of their magical powers is to take away your sense of what would be a magical power. To make you question yourself in such a way, and to come with them like you're almost hypnotic. Like they have all the answers.
Maybe like a bully. Maybe I can relate that to like when you're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade and girls are making fun of another girl. And you're kind of stuck in the middle. And they're like, oh, that shirt just looks so stupid, doesn't it? And they have this kind of magical power to make you.
See, now I think the magic isn't in that necessarily, because the girl still knows that person is a bully. To me, in that scenario, the person that has magical powers is that bully the friends that go along with her
Right. I thought you were saying that
in that scenario.
right. Yeah. In that scenario,
Yeah.
they have a magical power to pull in people whose minds are weaker
Mm-hmm.
than their insecurities have hardened to a place where they can become those plastic. I mean, they call like those kind of bullies plastics.
Oh,
That's kind of telling, right? I mean, even in Mean Girls, they're called the plastics.
oh, I never heard that before.
Plastic is hardened.
Oh, right. Yeah, and then to have the choice or the willingness, which you usually kind of are supposed to learn that in elementary school, to stay away from those kinds of people.
But then you're so vulnerable at 6th, 7th, 8th grade that there's a lot of conflict there.
Well, like, again, I just want to revert this. It's you really think that bully has the power.
Right.
It's like a
That's exactly what I was saying.
magical power. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly what I was trying to say.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
That. And so for the person that I think is the victim, it's hard for me to go back to that because the victim in elementary school doesn't think the bully has a power. But, I just think of adults. I think more of an adult, like, you think you have it figured out. You think, oh, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm independent, I've done all these things. I've gone to school, I've graduated, but yet someone can still come in. Because I've heard of people who are old and they have a relationship and within 6 months they've lost themselves.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
I was listening to this guy and he was in his 70s. And he said by the time he goes, he could feel it within the first 3 months being taken over. But it wasn't until 6 months that he was like, I was a complete mess. I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you heal from it, like I can actually say I've healed.
Yeah.
That you go back to that same self.
These things happen to us. I mean, you can believe what you want, but I believe that they happen to us for a good reason. To be able to really find yourself and really
I think you can
heal.
make meaning from it. And if you want to be healthy, you'll find really good reasons for it. Like for me, I definitely 100% am thankful that I went through it because I was able to see parts of me that that I'm so glad I see now. I can't say that they've disappeared. I'm just saying they're not in the shadows anymore. I know they're there. And now
that's what a flashlight does. You get to gain your little flashlight instead of
like I can't. And if you know where your weaknesses are, you can play the game better.
Oh yeah, you can completely, and you will know whether you want to play the game. You can just look outside and see what it is. If there's a spooky sound you hear, you can run to the door and you can ignite your flashlight and you can see everything. You can see, okay, well, it was just a
how it
a
feels
bear eating huckleberries.
You know how it feels, and you can tap out. That's the lovely thing.
And you're like, well, if he's just eating huckleberries, like I wasn't gonna pick any huckleberries, so go for it. I'm going back to sleep. Not going back to sleep. Maybe that's a bad, especially
right. It's not going back to sleep. It's just
no.
Well, I think I was trying to explain to Mike how it feels different. It feels different when you're making decisions to either tap out or block or defend yourself. It feels different when you're just in self-protection mode. Whereas when you're standing in a place of awareness and then you tap out. like from a place of love,
Yeah.
you tap out.
It's amazing to learn about how people are too. Like the awareness of that other people are not just the same. Where people's motives come from.
You know, I just
like go ahead.
Well, I just want to say something just to that, and then you can go back. Is that I listened to a guy say that with people with strong minds like that have no theory of mind, and I'm all, ooh, you got my attention, right? What do you mean they don't have a theory of mind? They can't imagine someone else thinking a different way, and that if they do think a different way, they're wrong. And if they would only think my way, then they'd be right.
Yeah. There's different ways that kind of blindness comes from, though. I know it from personal experience that I felt like I had that blindness looking back, but it wasn't because I didn't think that people could think a different way. I just really had been surrounded by people who kept proving that things happened, that their minds were similar. Like so what if I'm a person who grows up with a certain kind of family and they stay married, and then I go to high school and I meet and I make the cheer team and I have some friends that are similar to me, and then I'm in the choir that does these things, and then I go to college and then I meet some musicians where their families are even more well-to-do than mine. That is a certain kind of blindness, not because the person really doesn't think that anybody thinks not like them. It's just there's been so many things that have been proving one thing. Like it's not hardened though.
Yeah, I still think that comes from internal, because like I get what you're saying. So you could have white supremacists that only hang around with white supremacists, and like, how do you get someone else to wake up? But that's what I mean about theory of mind, is that being able to understand that how that person could think that way. Does that make sense? So you just came up with a theory of mind. So you can understand how someone may not be able to see someone else's point of view. Because
I never understood why people didn't understand other people's point of view. It was just so simple to me that we all have billions of memories that build upon each other, and that's our personality. So I never understood why people got mad at each other over politics or religion. I'm like, don't you get it? This person had a totally different life. So duh. It was just so easy for me to see.
Yeah.
But then I could still be blinded by a seduction or something because of the outside sources proving my personal mind.
Well,
even though I knew, go ahead.
Well, I just listened to Joe Rogan this morning. I had to stop listening to him because I was like, I need to hold this thought. So he was having an interview, and he said this. He said, it would be nice if we didn't have all this fighting and everything, if we could just all recognize that we see differently and then come to that agreement and then vote and understand we're not all going to think the same. But see, that's the same. That's what I'm talking about. So even that thinking, to really think that everyone's going to be that open-minded is really closed-mindedness. Does that make sense?
Right. That's exactly. Yeah.
So to think that everyone's going to be open-minded,
I hadn't hardened my own self-mindedness that's how I thought, because I had never really said it out loud and realized that that's the way I think. It was more tied to my birth family, who has a completely different way of thinking. And they, you know, when approached with the person that really changed my world, they were like, no, don't ever hang out with this person. I'm like, well, why?
So can you think of a time, and not now because it would be too easy now, but like before, when you kind of realized, oh wow, maybe my way of thinking is not the only way?
No, because I really felt myself a leader. I thought I was spreading something good. Like I definitely, yes, I did see people, of course. I mean, all the time.
Right.
That thought differently. But I wanted to help and change. Like I just had this drive to be able to be soft with people and get to know people who are different than me or the same. You know, I followed my heart.
Yeah, I remember thinking. I went to went to a work meeting. Part of my job was just to go out in the community and go to meetings. And so you met a lot of people from different businesses, different nonprofit businesses, and you'd sit in these meetings on how to improve that service for the community. And I'm sitting there next to this gal, and she's, of course, I just have this initial instinct that I can be friends with everybody. And sitting next to her, I'm like, of course we're just gonna be friends. So we start a conversation and and she looks to me, she goes, now there's something warm, right? We think we like each other. And so she reaches out and she's all, so do you like kayaking? And I'm like, oh, I just really don't kayak. And she just turned away and our conversation was done. I was like, and then so from then on through the rest of the meeting, we were done. And I was like, okay, then it just became cordial, more distant. Thank you. Bye. That type of thing. And that was one of those times where I was all, wow, like people really have strict, well, I would say not everyone, but some people have very strict rules on who's going to be their friend. Like clearly I was supposed to know how to kayak in order for us to be friends. You know what I mean? Like some people are just looking for that one thing. Or that's like their screening. Like maybe that could just be their screen. Like if you like kayaking, we can keep going further. But if you don't, then
don't you think maybe she should have gone to like a kayaking meeting?
Well, that was just work. I mean, people have done that, I remember my brother was saying this. He was talking to a girl. He thought he was getting along with her. And Dave goes, yeah, last year I went to an ayahuasca something. And the girl freaked out. And she's like, are you kidding me? And he's all, yeah. And they had been talking and they were friends. And it was over. Dave just could not understand. He's like, why would someone... I was like, I can totally see why. It's like, that was her filter. No way.
It is hard to have filters. I think that there's a opposite to that too. Like, where do you know where your filters are? I mean, I told you earlier today before we started this that my filter is like murder for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we definitely filter people in and filter people out.
Yeah, but like if you don't, I mean, that's a tricky one. Standards. Like, how do you know your standards? Like,
I think my standard... Well, I had to take a closer look at that, and I'm still taking a closer look at that. I was way too open, and I would get myself into situations where, where it was fine. I'll just use that analogy where it was fine. The other person doesn't kayak and maybe I should have just walked away, if that makes sense. Instead, yeah. I had this idea that of course you're going to get over that. I just always had that mentality. And I have been told.
I understand that.
Yeah. I've been told that I just jump over things or that I'm not taking things seriously, or that, and it's like, no, that's not me at all. I just really don't hang on to things. That I work on things constantly. So if I have a situation, you do too. I mull over it till it's completely integrated into my life. And
I don't think it's a terrible thing. I think it's optimistic and hopeful, and I think it helps some people sometimes.
You know, everyone
I'm not
has
saying
a
there's
different
no-
role, and I
yeah.
think it's a great role to play. You know, I used to have negative
It's a
feelings
role,
about it.
It's a role, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I used to be like, don't be that, you know, how do I fix this? And that's what I'm saying to you like earlier. You get to the state where you're like, wow, I actually don't have to fix this. Yeah.
You just have to get better at it and hone it. Hone what you know. I told you one day that it screamed across my screen. Hone what you know. Isn't that what it said? Yeah.
You know what? That was a good reminder for you to say that right now, because I really am still, I'm just still doing more research on getting this radio thing going. And yeah, I think that's the next step.
Hold what you know. I just thought of the song, "Don't go chasing waterfalls, into the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. I know that you're gonna," you know, like it's okay to, yeah. Don't go. Okay, what do you think that means? Don't go chasing waterfalls. It's like, so waterfalls they're just gonna keep going and spinning you around and around. But if you find like the brightness in what you're good at, then you can really make a difference.
Yeah, play in consciousness. Don't avoid consciousness. Because
Isn't
I think
it
that's
amazing to go back to what you know, to where you know, to things you know, and from a different mindset. That's amazing. That's where so much power is. And love. There's so much love there.
Yeah.
Because who else is going to know it like you?
Well, I just never thought. Remember, I was like, they hold too much magic. Those strong minds hold too much magic. How am I supposed to even? It's like the Lord of the Rings and the guys in the castle, and they're coming at him, and he says, "How could anyone fight against such evil?" And then they went and got all the dead people, dead ghosts, and they fought it for them. That's what my life feels like this month. That's what it feels like. I mean, you still have...
I feel like I understand.
Yeah.
Even that song, one of my songs, Muse. Yeah, I could be your muse, you could be mine too. It's cool. It's really good.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Lori.
Well, you know, Lauren, I was on the brink. I'm seriously, within the next couple days, I'm going to activate a radio station, and this is the thing, is I was looking online and I was trying to find jobs again. I do that every once in a while to test myself. And I'm looking online, so I'm like, I found a job I was going to apply for, and another one. And I start filling it out, and I was like, well, this should be my backup, right? Because I don't really have anything going on right now. And I'm like, and I kind of, if you pay attention, if you slow yourself down, and I'm all, who says I don't have anything going on right now? Like, who just said that?
Lori, I've been in the same spot in my mind the last couple days, and I went through the same couple things. Yep. I went through the same couple things.
So I had uploaded my resume, and I started doing the cover letter, and then on my other page on my computer, I was listening to how to start a radio station. I'm doing two things. I'm all, Lori, how about if you just do what you've learned? I canceled the resume and kept my research going. And then this morning, I was like, kept my research going. I'm all, this is what you're doing. To me, I feel like it's more of a decision now.
It is, and if you've learned from people who talk about success, like your plan B, you throw it out the window
Yeah.
when you really like couldn't believe. I was like, wait, how can I say, oh, Lori is like, oh, this is not how we treat a business. And then I'm like, oh, I need to find a job that does this. I'm like, wait, those are conflicting ideas. Like, I need to buckle the frick down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
And
doesn't
pay my
feel
heart's
good
attention to
decide, like to be able to be in that space, to be able to decide in that state of mind where you have clarity, instead of in what I had always felt raising my kids is I felt like I was always battling these other thought forms that really weren't even real. You know what I mean? So it's like everything I did was a battle to get over that next thought form. It was prayer, meditation, writing, all these things that I was doing constantly to try to combat my own ego, or it's not necessarily ego, other thought forms. And now it's like, wow, I have this free space to just decide, and I get to just...
I just had this like picture thought of either stepping on and over, like being big and stepping on and over, or because the other side is on the other side. When I take my dog for a walk, sometimes I see like the houses that I pass by that have dogs. I see it as like a video game. And I'm like, this is like a challenge that you go through. And they're like, rah, 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 and Rory's like, rah. And I'm like, okay, so how am I going to get through it this time? Sometimes I'll be like, no, Rory. Sometimes I'll pull him. Sometimes I'll just silently walk through it faster. Sometimes I'll, it looks like that to me. So you can go through it or over it. And if you go over it, it's going to come back for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. You don't step over something and expect it not to come back. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Who do we think we are?
Well, see, and that's part of being my age, is that trying to integrate everything that I've done in my life and have it make sense to the point where I feel good about it and it's completely integrated so I can consciously create now. Or am I going to look back on my whole life and take someone else's perspective who wants to devalue me and my entire life? I got a reading once from this guy, and he could feel, it was instantly, he could pull more than one person and this was early on, so this was probably close to when you and I first started talking. So what is that, 2 years ago? And it just stuck in my mind. He was like, you have serious enemies. And the thing is that even though I was so broken, I was still in that state of mind that it was like, it doesn't matter how many enemies I have. I should be strong enough. I should be able to know how to deal with them. I should be able to have, and what Teresa Vargo taught me, it was like, you are not that strong. And I was like, I didn't know how to take that, And wow. She says, it's okay. No one's that strong. In other words, she was pointing to a different way to battle.
I personally would have found that helpful. I thought that I was strong enough to make it through. Like I thought that I was that strong. If that makes any, it makes sense to you, I know. But I know that it's very popular and very helpful for some people they need that I am strong to even take a step. So I understand how that could be hurtful for certain people to hear I'm not that strong. So, or it's just not their path at the moment. But for me, just hearing you say that somebody said you are not that strong, like I had to find that out by myself, and it was very hard to take, and not just hard to take like my ego, just confusing. Like
Yeah,
very
it was confusing.
yeah, because because the truth is I am very strong, but I understand.
What she's saying. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, it floored me. Because
Yeah, I'm just
I
like-
knew she was saying, because she was in such a loving space, I
Yeah.
knew she was saying that she didn't mean I wasn't strong, you know?
I mean, because imagine how well you have to know somebody to be able to say that they're not that strong. You would have to know them so well. And imagine how trusting you'd have to be to take that and really understand it.
Yeah.
It's something that most relationships don't go through. Even marriage relationships or really close relationships. Even, you know, they usually stop at that, build up phase. And that's what they're like, well, that's what a friend is. You build each other up. But, yeah, that way of saying it speaks to me.
Yeah, it did to me too. I probably could have sat there and stared at her for an hour.
And it's all timing, too.
Yeah. It was just said at the perfect time. Because that's what, imagine, because I understand abuse a lot better now. Like people who are going through physical abuse. And there is something in that, because I remember I was talking to you on the phone this one day, and I was having to go through a thought form and integrate it, right? And it was hitting me in such a way, and Eckhart Tolle, and I've told you this before, but I'm going to tell you again, Eckhart Tolle explained it exactly how it happened to me. So I was having to go through a thought form, and I was turning in on myself. So it was like the energy was expanding from inside out, and I just wanted to hurt myself. It was this strange sensation of me refusing to call people that would hurt me. I knew what I wanted to instinctually do. I wanted to call someone because I was feeling horrible. It was a negative thought form. And I just knew that someone else would validate all that negative stuff. And it imploded. It got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It was just this massive force. And yeah, I was talking to you actually when that was happening.
I remember
to me.
this.
Yeah. And Teresa told me, she goes, you healed a part of your ego. And I was like, yeah, but is this going to stick? And since then, I really did notice that during those sessions with Teresa, I was like, I don't know what it is. When I get a certain thought forms that I'm trying to work through, I will go to people that will validate that. And yep, you're screw up. Yep, you messed up. Yep.
It reminds me of what you said last time in our last podcast about buying a house that didn't have a dishwasher.
Yeah.
You validate what you think you can or think you can't.
Well,
That's
the best thing about that was, in that moment, was just getting to the basics and paying attention to what affects you. So they're called subtle bodies. So you pay attention to what's happening in your body subtly, what's happening to you mentally subtly, what's happening to you spiritually subtly. You know, it's those subtle energies that,
yeah.
And I went on this trip with my sister, and we had talked about so many things that she had completely 100% forgotten. I was like, Kelly, I just said her name. Yeah, it's just, there's not much I forget. I mean, it's not because I have a really good memory. It's because I'm feeling it more than I'm thinking it.
Oh my gosh, Lori, you know that's how memory works, right? Like, that's how, like, scientifically, that's how your memory works.
Yeah.
Emotions.
Yeah, you're right. It is. That's why trauma is so impactful, because it's stuck in the body.
New set of lungs.